Chapter 26, The Auction. So Morrigan and Hawthorne head inside, and on their way in, there is a table with masks, and they each grab one so that they can blend in with the crowd. And as they're navigating their way through, there are people sipping champagne and laughing and having a wonderful time, and there are, of course, the snow globes, the stolen moments. And now that Morrigan is looking at them, she can hardly believe that she didn't pick it the first time she saw them, because now it seems so obvious what they contain. Some of the scenes inside the glass were quiet and subtle, easy to misinterpret, but there were also scenes of unmistakable death and destruction. A stampede of elephants kicking up dust as they barreled towards a waterhole crowded with wildlife. A cresting tidal wave about to decimate an entire village. A muddy, blood-spattered battlefield with cannonballs in flight. And the people here are just exactly the kind of people that you would expect to see at the Ghastly market. They are awful, sipping champagne and laughing and joking about what they see inside these glass globes, because they understand, they know exactly what they're looking at. They know that the people inside these globes are dying, that they are frozen in the moments just before their death, and they think it's funny. And there's a couple who are laughing at a teenage boy who's about to fall off a horse onto cobblestones. And Morrigan just wishes that she could do something, but she has to stop herself because this is not what they came for. She has to remind herself, we're on a mission here. We need to go and find Cadence and Lamb. I can't do anything right now for the people inside these globes. And so they go and find their way into the main hall for the big event, and they see the 4 auction items. And they are set up in such a way that everyone can see them and sort of arranged in these tableaus to represent what it is that their knack is, or what it is that they are offering, essentially. Just like Alfie and his giant fish tank, they had each been made the centerpiece of a grotesque display, a mockery of their unique knacks. Professor Onstold at the farthest end was chained to the minute hand of a giant clock, currently positioned 5 minutes to the hour, so that he was at least nearly upright. Morrigan wondered how many hours he'd already been there, and how many revolutions of the clock face he'd made, the blood rushing unpleasantly to his head and back all the time. How long could he bear it? And Cadence is dressed up in flowing silks, standing next to a golden lamp, because they're apparently trying to suggest that she's some kind of genie who grants wishes and obeys orders. And the angel is hovering in midair, tied at the joint of his wings, and his mouth is covered so that he can't sing his way out, because it is not Cassiel. In fact, it is Israfel. Morrigan realizes this the moment that she sees him. And of course, the 4th item is Lamb. Lamb was perched on a throne in the center of her platform, wearing an elaborate golden crown that was far too big for her head. And Lambeth is saying something. She is quietly whispering something that Morrigan can't quite make out at first. And then she realizes she's saying 5 words over and over and over. Calling, dying, freezing, burning, flying. Calling, dying, freezing, burning, flying. And Morrigan and Hawthorne do not know what this means. And they're trying to figure out how they can help, what they can do, who they should go to first. And Morrigan is so frustrated because Squall set up this whole thing so that she could be the one to finish it, so that she could use her skills as a Wundersmith. But she has exactly 2 Wundersmith skills. She can call wonder and she can light candles. And that's literally it. And she thinks, okay, fine, I have a place to start, at least I can call wonder. And she starts singing her little nocturne song and gathering and gathering and gathering wonder to her, even though she doesn't quite know yet what she's going to do with it. And as she's doing this, the auctioneer is describing the final lot. So all of the other people have been sold. This is Lamb. She's the last one. And so let us begin. May I present our most anticipated lot in the history of the Ghastly market. Her Royal Highness Princess Lamia Bathari Amati Ra. Morrigan stopped singing. Hawthorne grew completely still. Princess who? A member of the Royal House of Ra in Far East sang, Princess Lamia is 4th in line to inherit the throne from her grandmother, the Queen. When the Royal House of Ra learned that their spare was a short-range oracle, they sent her off to be educated by our fancy friends at the Wondrous Society. There were jeers from the crowd. In doing so, they committed high treason against the ruling Wintersea party, who, according to my Republic sources, seem to be under the impression that little Princess Lamia is bedridden due to frail health. The enterprising Queen Amar has paid off some poor village waif to laze about in the palace for a few years, pretending to be her granddaughter. Morrigan, of course, her father worked for the Wintersea party and she is from the Republic, so she fully understands the gravity of this. If it was true, if Lambeth really was a member of the royal family in Far East Sang, and if they really had smuggled her out of the Republic against Wintersea party law, she was in even greater danger than they'd realised. People in the Republic weren't even allowed to know the Free State existed. And so the man begins to auction her off, and he says, once you've taken her knack as an oracle, maybe you want to ransom her back to the royal family, or you could sell her out to the Wintersea party, or keep her for blackmail purposes. Whatever you want, we're just going to take a lot of money for her. Morrigan has been gathering wonder this whole time, and when she opens her eyes to look at it, it looks like she is standing on the surface of the sun. She has gathered so much wonder. The wonder that gathered to her now was perfectly aligned with her intention. Her righteous anger at everything that had happened tonight, everything that had happened this year, had at last given it the purpose it craved. Morrigan thought of Mildmay's greed and betrayal. She thought of the cruelty of Mathilde Lachance, imprisoning people within their own deaths. She thought of Ezra Squall, who'd been pulling her strings like a puppet all this time, who'd arranged this nightmare just so Morrigan could be the one to end it. And she thought of the casual malice, the evil of anyone who thought they had the right to buy and sell a knack, to buy and sell a life. The nearest globe shattered and its contents burst spectacularly into the room. And so begins a big, catastrophic, chaotic domino effect. The first globe has shattered and it sets off the others. And one by one, they shatter and they spill their tragedies out across the floor. And everyone in the room is just screaming and running and trying to figure out what is going on as they all get caught up in this melee of death and destruction. There's an avalanche of rocks. There's a tidal wave. There's a woman engulfed by a swarm of bees. There are stampeding elephants, a great white shark. There are all sorts of things happening, and people are just trying to get away from these scenes of death, because as they break free from their globes, they just grow. And they are suddenly filling the room, all of these hundreds of death scenes. And Morrigan doesn't know what to do. She had just wanted to cause a distraction so that she could help her friends. And she has caused a big distraction, a very, very big distraction. And now she doesn't know how they're actually going to get Lamb and Cadence and Israfel and Onstold free. Just as a gigantic tidal wave is about to crash down on her and Hawthorne, everything just stops. The deafening noise of screams and bellowing animals and rushing water all went suddenly deathly quiet. The tsunami above their heads slowed to an imperceptible speed, almost quivering with tension. All Morrigan could hear was the sound of her own heartbeat and Hawthorne's rapid breathing, and then the silence is broken by a weak voice from across the room. It's Professor Onstold, and he says, "Hurry, I can't hold it much longer." Chapter 27, None Sing So Wildly Well. So Professor Onstold has done it again. He has frozen time, only this time Morrigan is unaffected by it. She and Hawthorne are outside of whatever frozen nonsense is going on, and they're trying to figure out how to use this to their advantage, what they can do to try and help their friends. And as Hawthorne is coming up with a game plan, Morrigan hears Lambeth's words in her head again. Those 5 words that she was saying: calling, dying, freezing, burning, flying. And suddenly she understands it. They weren't nonsense words at all. Lamb is an oracle. She was describing what she was seeing on the horizon. Calling, Morrigan had called wonder. Dying, everyone here was dying 100 times over in 100 different ways. Freezing, Onstold had frozen time. That left burning and flying. Suddenly she has this moment of clarity and she figures it out. She knows exactly what she's got to do because Lambeth the Oracle has laid out her next steps for her. And she says, "Hawthorne, you go and help Cadence down and get out of here. I will be right behind you. Don't worry, I've got this sorted." She knows the next thing that she has to do, burning. She knows that she can breathe fire with a precision that she couldn't have managed before Squall's lesson on the rooftop. So she frees Israfel by burning through his ropes, and she tells him, she speaks to him, because she remembers that when she was frozen in the classroom with Mildmay, she knew what was going on. She could hear things. And so she says to him, "Listen to me, you're going to unfreeze in just a few moments. I need you to fly to Lambeth, to Princess Lamia, take her and get her out of here." And so he does that. So Hawthorne is taking care of Cadence, Israfel is taking care of Lambeth, and all there is left is Professor Onstold. And Morrigan is looking at this tortoise man, this tortoise one, who is on the opposite side of the room, up high, and she's trying to figure out how she can get all the way over to him through this insanity in this room to rescue him and somehow managed to get him out by herself. And just as she's about to figure it out, a giant lightning-struck tree falls to the ground and effectively cuts off the other side of the room, and there's really nothing that she can do, and she knows it, and Onstold knows it, and he tells her to run, and she doesn't want to, because as awful as this man has been to her all year long, no matter the terrible things that he has said to her, he has just saved her life and Hawthorne's and Cadence's and Lamb's and Israfel's, and she wants to help him, but he's adamant there's nothing that she can do, and he says, run, go. And so she does. And she flees the Museum of Stolen Moments and catches up to Cadence and Hawthorne. And then Israfel brings Lambeth, and he says to them, all of you need to run. You need to go home and don't stop until you're a few blocks away. And this is the most important thing. You need to cover your ears as tightly as you possibly can. And the others, of course, have no idea what he's talking about, but Morrigan understands. They run off, but Morrigan's a bit hesitant, and she stops to say something to him. But he beats her to it. Israfel says, Morrigan Crow, you saved my life tonight. I find myself in your debt. He watched her for a moment, pressing his mouth into a line. Morrigan could tell he wanted to say something more, but he wasn't sure if he should. Or perhaps he couldn't quite find the right words. Israfel breathed a deep sigh. You do well not to mention that to the folks at One Sock. I shouldn't be in your debt. It complicates things, you see, for both of us. Morrigan does not see. She does not know what he is saying, but she can't ask now because he is turning to go back to the Museum of Stolen Moments, and she says, what are you doing? Are you going back to try to rescue them? He says, no, they're beyond saving. She sees him fly over to the museum and stop on the steps outside, and he's illuminated against the doorway, and suddenly she understands. None sing so wildly well. She remembered what Jupiter had told her that night at the old Delphian music hall. A perfect and unbroken peace, he had said. Loneliness and sadness will be a distant memory. Your heart will fill up and you'll feel the world could never disappoint you again. Israfel couldn't save them. He could only sing to them. And she knows she shouldn't listen. She knows that she should have her ears well and truly covered, but she can't resist. And she takes her hands away from her ears just for a second, just to hear a tiny, tiny bit of Israfel's voice. When Morrigan tried to recall, days and weeks and years later, the sound of that single note, the feeling of it, she would remember being warmed by the sun in winter and held by a mother she'd never known. She'd remember a joyful, bone-deep certainty that she had never hurt another living being, that nobody had ever truly hurt her and nobody ever could. She'd remember the smell of earth after rain. She'd also remember what came next, the clatter of footsteps on cobblestones and the feel of strong hands closing fast over her ears, blocking out all sound. Looking up to see a pair of wide, wild blue eyes in a forest of ginger hair, the bittersweet feeling of crashing back to earth, knowing she would land somewhere safe. Chapter 28, Closing a Window. So the next day, Morrigan and Jupiter are debriefing on the events of Hallowmas Night. Not many people managed to escape from the Museum of Stolen Moments, but from the few that did, most of them managed to slip through the cracks somehow and just disappear into the night. There were a few arrests, but they probably won't face any charges because, as Jupiter says, although black market trading is illegal, they're going to have a hard time proving that that's what anyone was doing since the museum itself and all of the evidence was destroyed, and the people who were arrested are denying any involvement and saying that they just thought it was a fancy party that they were attending. They didn't know about any auction. It's unclear whether Mildmay has gotten away with his crimes, however, because although he has disappeared into thin air, Morrigan isn't sure whether he disappeared himself into thin air or whether the hunt and smoke of shadow disappeared him. And Jupiter says if he's smart, and I think we can agree he must be reasonably cunning to have fooled so many people, then he will have run very far away by now, and he won't stop running. And Morrigan kind of has to grapple with the fact that these two teachers that she has had all year, that she thought she had a really good read on, have just completely bamboozled her with the way that they have ended up. Her favourite teacher, the one who was kind to her, who was friendly and who told her what a brilliant job that she was doing and really boosted her self-esteem all year long, turned out to be the worst kind of traitor, and the man who was awful to her and said awful things and holds awful beliefs about her and all Wundersmiths saved her life and saved the life of her friends. And she says, I can't match those things up. Morrigan looked at him frowning. She didn't quite know how to say what she meant, but he nodded, encouraging her to try. The second thing doesn't change the first thing, not for Mildmay and not for Onstald. Jupiter sums it up pretty well when he says, I don't know what to tell you, Mog. Jupiter sighed. Some people are brave bullies, some people are friendly cowards. So he's saying, yeah, Onstald did a really brave and noble thing in the end, but you don't have to feel that that erases the way that he treated you. And that's like a really kind of difficult and complicated, morally complex thing for Morrigan as a 12-year-old to have to kind of figure out in her head. And she tells him as well all about Ezra Skall and about the window that she had unwittingly allowed him to open into Nevermoor, using wonder through her, using his powers through her gathering of wonder. And Jupiter kind of blames himself because of course he's a witness and he has seen all of this wonder gathering to her, but he's never raised a Wundersmith before. He doesn't really know what he's looking at. He says, I thought it was just normal. I didn't realize that you were in so much danger and that was going to leave you vulnerable to that sort of attack. And he realizes, and she realizes, you know, she has to learn how to use the wondrous arts. And his solution is to say, grab your brolly, let's go. And he takes her to one sock and marches into the office of the scholar mistresses, Dearborn and Murgatroyd. And it's Dearborn who's there, but he demands to see Murgatroyd. And he pesters and pesters and pesters until Dearborn finally transforms into Murgatroyd. And he says, you said that she should have been in your school, so put her in your school. She doesn't belong in the School of Mundane Arts. She's going to have to learn how to use the wondrous arts. And without saying anything specifically about Ezra Skall, Murgatroyd just manages to guess. She says, he's back then, Murgatroyd interrupted. She directed her question at Morrigan. Skall, been visiting, has he? Morrigan blinked, instinctively turning away from the intensity of Murgatroyd's flat, murky, grey gaze. She looked at Jupiter instead, who nodded at her. Yes. Taught you some tricks, has he? Yes. Murgatroyd looked neither surprised nor frightened by this news. She sucked air through her sharp brown teeth. Thought so. Heard about you shutting down the Ghastly market. Thought you must have learned something nasty along the way. Morrigan bristled at what felt like an accusation, but the scholar mistress gave her an appreciative little nod. Good for you. And so, in the end, Murgatroyd agrees. Fine, you can come into my school. And she says, I'll take the little beastie. And so it looks like Morrigan is going to somehow be able to learn the wretched arts. Chapter 29, The Final Demand. We've done it. We're at the end. So the next day, everyone at One Sock is gathered out in the garden. They've been assembled by the High Council of Elders, who tell them all about Professor Onstald and his brave sacrifice. And Elder Quinn says, at this point I'm confident there isn't a soul among you who remains unaware of the existence of the Ghastly market, the story of its destruction, and the heinous fact that the abduction of society members for the market was perpetrated by one of our own. And she goes on to say, what I will say is this, it has been many, many years since one of our own has so deeply shamed the Wondrous Society. I pledge to you that the traitor whose worthless name shall never again pass my lips will be found and will be brought to justice. You have my word. And then she starts talking about the two brave junior scholars who rescued their fellow society members from the Ghastly market and destroyed the market. And it's clear that she's talking about Hawthorne and Morrigan. But meanwhile, Morrigan has had a note slipped into her hand, and she opens it and finds it is the final blackmail note, the final demand. It reads, Morrigan Odell Crow, we have kept the secret of Unit 919, but you have a dangerous secret of your own. Reveal yourself as a Wundersmith to everyone present before the clock has struck the hour, or we will reveal the truth about Republic deserter Princess Lamia Bethari Amati Ra to the Wondrous Society and to the world. And so the big clang here is that the secret they were protecting all this time wasn't Morrigan's secret at all. It was Lambeth's. And Morrigan now has this massive dilemma because the clock is about to strike the hour and she and Hawthorne are being called up to the front to accept their applause and their accolades for the brave thing that they did. And Morrigan is wrangling this enormous moral dilemma that she now has seconds to make a decision on, because she has a choice between protecting her brothers and sisters from having like their lives ruined and being kicked out of the society, or protecting Lambeth from something much, much worse, because she does fully understand the danger that Lambeth is in if her secret is revealed, and not just her, but also her entire royal family. And she knows that if she reveals herself to be a Wundersmith, when her whole unit has been protecting that secret all year long and going to great lengths to protect it and to show their loyalty, and then she just blurts it out, she knows that they will never forgive her, but she can't bring herself to reveal Lambeth's secret. She can't do that to her. It's way too dangerous. And so as the clock strikes 9, she says, "I'm a Wundersmith," on the microphone to everyone present. And there are a few laughs and some looks of anger and some angry muttering and some confusion. And just to be clear, she says it again louder, "I am a Wundersmith." No one seems to know if this is a joke or if this is real, that this kid who no one knows what her knack is has just announced that she is up there with Ezra Squall, the evilest man who ever lived. And she sees Jupiter making his way towards her through the crowd, but Elder Quinn holds up a hand to stop him, and she says, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have another cause to celebrate this morning. Unit 919 has just passed their 5th and final trial," she announced with a small, satisfied smile. "You all remember quite keenly, I am sure, what it was like to undertake your own loyalty trial when you were first-year scholars. The nature of the trial is different for each unit, of course, but the object remains the same, a test of your commitment to your oaths. This marks the completion of Unit 919's final test, and so we welcome them for the second time, and with even greater pride, to the Wondrous Society proper. Unit 919, the loyalty you have shown each other this year in the face of various dangers and difficulties will serve you for the rest of your days. You are sisters and brothers for life, not because you took an oath, but because you proved it." So, the whole thing was a weird, slightly sick test for them to prove their loyalty. And if you as a reader don't quite know how to feel about that, good. You shouldn't quite know how to feel about that. It's a very weird thing for a school, for an organisation to have done. It's clear though that still no one is sure whether the Wundersmith thing was a joke, part of the test, but Elder Quinn clears it up. She says, "Elder Saga, Elder Wong, and I wish to remind you that although the Society has a rich history of nurturing diverse and sometimes dangerous talents, we would never knowingly invite a corrupting force into our ranks. Indeed, by destroying the Ghastly market and saving 2 Wondrous Society lives, Miss Crow has shown herself to be a force for good. A useful, interesting, good person whom we are delighted to call one of our own. She may be a Wundersmith, but truly from today onwards, she is our Wundersmith." The crowd seems unconvinced. But she goes on to say, "I remind you all that your oath extends not just to your own unit, but to everyone in the Wondrous Society. And this is now a secret we are keeping within the walls of Onesock. No one outside the Wondrous Society can know that we are housing a Wundersmith. We're all bound up in this secret together." Which nobody seems particularly happy about, least of all Jupiter. So anyway, the crowd disperses and Unit 919 gather to talk about the weird thing that just happened. And Thaddeus says, "Why did they blackmail us to keep Morrigan's secret when they were just going to make her tell everyone anyway? What a dirty trick." And they want to know what's in this note that made Morrigan reveal herself. What did it say? But of course Morrigan can't show them because it has Lamb's secret in there and it's not her secret to tell. But Lambeth steps up and she says, "It's about me, isn't it?" Lambeth's quiet voice came from the back of the group and she stepped forward looking miserable but determined. Everyone fell silent. "Elder Quinn said that our whole unit passed the loyalty trial, but she was wrong. I didn't pass. You all made a choice to put your sisters and brothers before yourselves, but I chose to be dishonest. I let you believe it could only be Morrigan's secret you were protecting. I told myself that was true, but deep down I wondered if it was really my secret." And then she goes on to tell them all, "My name isn't Lambeth Amara, it's Princess Lamia Bathari Amati Ra. I'm a member of the Royal House of Ra from the Silklands in Far East Thang." She paused, looking around at their stunned faces. "Lamb, just call me Lamb." It's not really true what she says. Like, she's taking this on herself, saying, "I chose to be dishonest." She was in an impossible situation because Lamb was also protecting her family who were in terrible, terrible danger if she ever told anyone her own secret. So all in all, it's a really big, nasty, awful situation to put a bunch of kids in. That's Onesock. That's the Wondrous Society for you. And Lamb explains, "My family sent me here to learn how to use my knack. It used to give me terrible headaches that made me sick. Since I've been at Onesock, I've learned how to cope with my visions better." Morrigan looks around at everyone and she's like, we got to keep this secret within ourselves. This has to stay within the unit. We all have to protect her. She is in danger if anyone finds out. Sisters and brothers, loyal for life. And I think this is truly where they become a unit, because they all step up and they say, yep, we're going to protect our sister. We're going to protect this very, very dangerous secret. And then off they all go to their classes, including Morrigan, who joins Cadence and Lambeth in a rail pod headed for her new school, the School of Arcane Arts. And that is the end of Wundersmith, The Calling of Morrigan Crow. Dun, 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 dun. I don't know. I don't know how to end things. It needs a noise. So we have come to the end of Wundersmith, and we are about to start our third and final read for the read-along, HOLLOWPOX, The Hunt for Morrigan Crow. So we're going to start this week by reading chapters 1 to 12, and I'll see you again this time next week, or on the actual weekend, for the recap. Now, I promised you a second giveaway when we finish Wundersmith, and the results of my informal polling on Instagram of what you might like that giveaway to be, because I do have a few options, it was kind of an even split between all of the options that I gave you. So for this one, I'm going to go with option B. And I think at the time of filming this, the votes were very slightly tipped in favour of option B, which is a signed and personalised 3-book special edition or collector's edition, I don't know what we're calling it, set of these. So this is the Australia-New Zealand special edition, and they are really, really beautiful. These are the ones obviously that I've been reading from. They are lovely and foiled, and they have sprayed edges, and they have a little ribbon. I love a little ribbon in a hardcover book, and they have these gorgeous end papers with all of the character artwork, and they're very, very lovely, and you could own a set of these of your own, and I will sign them and personalize them for whoever wins. And same thing, you just have to comment on this video, be following me on Instagram and following me here, subscribe to this channel, and comment anything you like. If you have questions, if you have any thoughts on the chapters that we went through, if you want to tell me about your dogs or whatever, comment below, and everyone who comments will be in with an entry to the giveaway, which I will announce next week. Now, the other thing, there's one other part to this giveaway though, so it's not just this set. I am also going to include these very special things, which you may not have seen before. These were a kind of little added extra that were put out by Hachette when these books came out, and I have some of them. And so you will also receive these cool fabric patches. There is a crow for HOLLOWPOX, and a W for Wundersmith, and an umbrella for Nevermoor. So that's the cool little giveaway. See you next week, and I'll let you know who wins. Bye!